The countdown continues. T-minus 9 hours, 22 minutes and change until the United Auto Workers contracts expire with the big three automakers, Stellantis, Ford, GM. We could see employees from all three of these plants all three of these companies go on strike tonight at midnight. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Action News Now. I'm Josh Krupp. We're learning more about the strike strategy that UAW is going to implement here, and it is one that they said they have never tried before, a different one that will not result in the tens of thousands of employees striking at once across the country tonight at midnight. What is going to happen 2 hours before that clock expires at 10 p.m., UAW President Shawn Fain going to go on Facebook Live and announce what locals are selected to strike. Could that include some in Toledo? Could it include a lot of them? Could it include just a couple? We don't know, but we will find out later tonight. Fain saying yesterday that they are ready to strike against all three automakers if a deal is not reached by midnight tonight. Take a listen to what Shawn Fain had to say about that strategy, why they're selecting it, and then we'll hear from some of your elected officials about what they're watching out for here as the strike looms.
We can call on multiple locals to stand up and go out on strike all at once, or we can call on locals one at a time. And we can do this multiple times a week or only once a week. This is going to provide your national negotiators with incredible leverage at the bargaining table.
So really no idea how many people are going to be on strike tomorrow if the deal is not reached. But he says they could call on locals once a week. We could call on them multiple times a week. We could do, the ball is in their court, and that's what they want. They want to keep the automakers on edge. We will see what that actually looks like as early as midnight tonight if a deal is not reached with one or two or potentially three of the big three automakers. Let's get into some reaction here as we've been talking to our elected officials across Ohio and Northwest Ohio today and throughout the week about what a potential strike would look like. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur saying in a statement that she supports the auto workers if they do decide to go on strike, saying the auto industry is the backbone of our regional economy and our workers deserve fair pay, quality health care benefits, and safety on the job. Governor Mike DeWine, we asked him for comment today about what a strike would look like, about his thoughts. Governor Mike DeWine's press secretary said we respectfully decline to comment at this time. So no comment from Governor Mike DeWine. We haven't heard from Congressman Bob Latta either. We will get to what Senator J.D. Vance thinks about this, calling himself a very pro-labor Republican who has some thoughts about the Biden administration and why he thinks that they could be to blame for whatever ends up happening here. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, moments ago on the Senate floor, Senator Sherrod Brown addresses this. We'll hear from him and a part of his speech on the floor, and then we will welcome in Senator J.D. Vance.
America should continue to lead the global industry, auto industry, but the big three can't do it without their workers. There's still time for this to happen, for these auto workers and auto companies to agree to a fair contract. There's still time for these great American companies to do the right thing. It means something we probably don't do enough of here, Mr. President. It means listening to their workers. It means foregoing strike-busting tactics. It means, like we saw the last time UAW workers were forced to picket. 2019, GM cut off striking workers' health insurance, a bad faith tactic that not only hurts the most vulnerable asset, their workers, it hurts their families, and it really hurts their communities. I was at Local 14 in Toledo talking to one worker. Here's what happens when an auto company uses its prowess and its power and its anti-union fervor when they do that and take away health care. One worker had his health care was cut off, Local 14 Toledo Chrysler plant. His 4-year-old daughter, Chesney, needed surgery, but he couldn't get it because GM canceled the family's health insurance. Again, these are workers. They had a contract, they paid in, they were picketing because they didn't think over these 10 years GM and Chrysler and Ford lived up to their side of the bargain. I have a bill with Senator Casey, who sits next to me, to make sure it doesn't happen again, the Striking Workers Health Care Protection Act. We shouldn't need that. We shouldn't need companies to be strong-armed or forced by government to honor the dignity of work. That shouldn't be necessary when these iconic companies that have done so well, paid good dividends, rewarded their executives compensation that nobody would have dreamed up a generation ago. We shouldn't have to do that, but until these companies understand you should respect the dignity of work and they don't, maybe it's time that government says, okay, we're going to have a Striker Workforce Health Protection Act, Striking Workers Health Care Protection Act. It's time for these auto companies to do the right thing, to bargain in good faith, and to agree to a contract that indeed honors the dignity of work.
Let's welcome in Ohio's other senator, Republican J.D. Vance. Senator Vance, a lot of attention here on UAW workers in the Big Three tonight. Just give me your opening thoughts about what a potential strike looks like.
Well, let me say a couple things about this. First of all, we want to avoid a strike. It would be economically devastating. We have to remember, of course, that a lot of the communities that depend on these auto jobs aren't just the auto workers themselves, but are also all the restaurants, the small businesses in these factory towns. So it's going to be devastating. But my hope is that if there's some pain from this strike, and I do expect at least a limited strike, there's also some gain in the form of higher wages for Ohio's auto workers, because they've been getting the short end of the stick. And this leads me to my final point here is we have a 6,000-pound elephant in the room about these auto worker strikes, which is this. We are going way too far, way too fast on the transition to the electric vehicle economy. Still, way too many of the minerals, the components, the parts are manufactured in communist China. So if you're pushing the EV industry, you're pushing a lot of Ohio auto worker jobs into communist China. That's a bad deal for Ohio auto workers. It's also a bad deal for anybody who's buying a car. The reason they're getting so expensive is because we're spending so much money subsidizing an industry in communist China instead of actually promoting the industry here in the state of Ohio that's doing so well.
And UAW leaders say they don't plan to go on strike with every member across the board, across the country, meaning this won't be an all-out strike, at least at first. What are your thoughts about the UAW's strike strategy?
Well, look, two things about that. First of all, I think that if they're going on a limited strike, and I've heard that too, they should be focused on the parts of the economy where they're getting the most pressure and where the Biden administration has been most wrong. And that, again, that's this rapid, I think too rapid transition to electric vehicles. That would be a good thing because I think it would highlight to the Biden administration, you can't take Ohio's manufacturers, you can't take Michigan and Pennsylvania's workers for granted. You've actually got to focus on the problems and try to empower the industries that are doing well. So that's number one. But number two here is I think, auto workers have a real opportunity here to hold the Biden administration's feet to the fire. Every time we subsidize an electric vehicle manufactured in China, every time we have a policy that increases the price of gas, that's an Ohio auto worker's job that gets destroyed. That's an Ohio middle-class family that loses their access to the American dream. Auto workers have got to make their voices heard and say enough is enough with this crazy transition to electric vehicles. Let's focus on the industries that are doing well in the state of Ohio. Let's let consumers buy what they want to buy, whether it's gas-powered or EV, and let's not throw a ton of auto workers into poverty on the idea that we're going to have 100% of the country driving electric vehicles. It's insane. It's not going to happen. And even the attempt to make it happen is going to throw a lot of Ohio workers into poverty.
Senator J.D. Vance, Republican from Ohio, thank you for the time, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
So Senator Vance, Senator Brown, you heard both of their thoughts on this. We showed you a statement from Marcy Kaptur. No comment from Governor Mike DeWine, and still no response from Congressman Bob Latta. So that's a look at what's your local elected officials are saying as we get closer and closer to this strike. 9 hours, 14 minutes, 5 seconds and counting. We'll keep an eye on that countdown tonight and keep a closer eye on 10 o'clock. This is when the contract expires, but 10 o'clock is whenever we'll learn, if there is no deal at that point reached, what local union members are going to go out on strike across the country. Could it be some in Toledo? Could it be Defiance? Could it be, we don't know at this time. At 10 o'clock, we'll find that out later this evening. More coverage of this coming up tonight on Action News at 4. Our team coverage begins then, talking about what a strike could look like and the preparations underway here in Ohio and across the country. We'll see you on TV in just about an hour and 15 minutes for Action News at 4.